Welcome to the Ask Dr. Khan show. We're just one whiteboard away from solving your health puzzle. This is episode number 149, and today we're going to continue the conversation we had a couple of episodes ago regarding gluten and its effect on brain. Gluten creates diverse neurological symptoms, and these symptoms may be subtle and maybe comes and goes, waxes and wanes, so it makes it very difficult for a Western healthcare practitioner to diagnose, because in Western medicine, everything is about boxing you into a label, right? They want to call it MS, they want to call it depression, and then they have a drug for depression, they have a drug to suppress a symptom, but they don't really look at the underlying root cause. So gluten causes these diverse neurological symptoms that can be subclinical, meaning it's not bad enough to be called a disease entity. So on the test, it might be normal, you have MRI, CAT scan, blood test, everything's normal, but yet you still have problems. So we're going to talk about how does gluten cause these issues? What are the mechanisms, the physiology of how gluten actually lead to the symptom, right? The symptom is just what you feel, but there's the steps where that turn into that. So if you understand the steps of the physiology, like we show you on these whiteboard presentations, then you'll be able to see that there's hope, see that you can solve this problem either by yourself or with our help. And that's what it's all about. So let's talk about gluten and its diverse neurological manifestation. So let's start with gluten. Now gluten, in case you're not familiar, is a protein found in wheat, barley, rye, and oats. Now oat, a lot of people ask me about that, natively is gluten-free, but the way they're stored and processed in the United States is that they're stored and processed in facility that also process gluten, so there's a lot of cross-contamination. So unless you get gluten-free oats, you're likely to get gluten in your oats, okay? So now gluten is a protein that are found in these different grains, specifically wheat. Some people even argue that certain type of gluten, meaning wheat germ agglutinin, which is a type of lectin, is also found in other grains. So some people argue that a lot of people with gluten problem probably have problem with grains as well and other legumes. So let's just stick with gluten for now and talk about how gluten can cause these diverse neurological symptoms. So let's start first of all with inflammation. And over the past several episodes at the Ask Dr. Khan show, I talked about brain inflammation and microglial activation. If you missed those, you definitely want to go back to previous episode at the Ask Dr. Khan show, either on our Facebook timeline or on YouTube, and it's youtube.com/PeterKhanDC. That's our YouTube handle. Okay, so if you just search Dr. Peter Khan on YouTube, you'll see the bald-headed Chinese guy, can't miss it. And I talked about the brain inflammation over the past several episodes. You definitely want to catch up on the fundamentals of that so you understand why this is such a problem. But gluten can trigger brain inflammation. And when you have brain inflammation, this is going to lead to blood-brain barrier damage. Again, we talked extensively about blood-brain barrier and what microglial activation and inflammation does to the blood-brain barrier. So definitely go catch up on those past few episodes. So you're going to damage blood-brain barrier. And when you damage the blood-brain barrier, you're going to lead to this inflammatory response. Your brain start to become more autoimmune. So you can have autoimmune. This is where your immune system, because of this increasing inflammation, start to get the inflammation process, and your immune system start to get ramped up and wind up, and they can start to turn your immune system against your own brain tissue and cause neurological autoimmunity. And that's bad. Okay? Now, this damaged blood-brain barrier can also lead to these chemicals that normally does not get through the blood-brain barrier. You see, your blood-brain barrier is like a net, like a mesh, like a filter that kind of keep out the bad stuff and only let the good stuff in. When you have damaged blood-brain barrier, chemicals and antigens to chemicals that otherwise would not normally get through the blood-brain barrier now can get through. And that can cause chemical intolerance. When these chemicals start to get through the blood-brain barrier, then you can trigger this neurological autoimmunity and chemical intolerance. This is someone where you walk through the department store, you smell like perfume, you get a headache. You work with cleaning solutions, cleaning chemicals, Clorox gives you a headache. You just become sensitive to chemicals that you used to be okay with, but now you're no longer okay with because you develop this problem. This problem developed over time, and gluten is just one of many things that can cause it. And there's tons of scientific peer-reviewed literature that show this process happens. So gluten is not just like a fad or it's a preference. For some people, this is definitely a problem, and this can be tested. We can test blood-brain barrier protein. We can test if you have immune reaction against certain chemicals. We can test if you have immune reaction against certain type of brain proteins. We can test if you have gluten sensitivity. These all can be objectively tested, and if you have data, you have information, then you can start to do things differently, okay? Now, gluten is also known to cause leaky gut. And I've made many videos talking about leaky gut. Again, if you're new to my show, welcome to the show, but you definitely want to get caught up by binge watching the Ask Dr. Khan show. Go to YouTube or on Facebook timeline. YouTube is where it's all archived. Again, it's youtube.com/PeterKhanDC. And what happens when you have leaky gut, you get this problem with malabsorption. It's really a double whammy of malabsorption and inflammation. So you don't want to absorb the nutrient very well. One of the things that you don't absorb well are called methyl donors. This might be a new topic that we have to do a future show on. But methyl donors are these nutrients that help your body carry out this chemical process called methylation. And methylation is a very basic chemical process that help you to make stuff, like to help you make DNA, to help you make neurotransmitters, to help you make immune cells, cell membrane. So you need methyl donors from nutrients. What are some of these examples of methyl donors? Example will be trimethylglycine, which will be like stomach acid. Example will be like folic acid and B12, and vitamin B6 is a cofactor. So you have these methyl donors that's needed to help protect the brain. And if you have decreased methyl donors, because methyl donor absorption is highly dependent on absorption in the gut, then what happens is you're gonna lose that brain protection, and you can lead to increased likelihood of neurodegeneration. Neurodegeneration means you start to lose brain cells. And if you lose brain cells in a certain region, then you're going to lose function associated with that region. For example, in your hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that controls memory in your temporal lobe, if you start to lose hippocampal cells, you're going to start to have memory loss. This is where you walk into a room, you forget why you walk in there in the first place. You may need a list for everything. You forget people's name. You just got introduced to them 10 seconds ago. Now you're forgetting already. You're just becoming more and more forgetful rapidly, in the past, 6 months to a year, where before it wasn't like that. Now, a lot of people would chalk it up to old age, but people who are in the 80s and 90s that have good brain function, they're clear, they have good memory, right? And you also know people who are younger than you that have worse brain function than you, right? And forgetful, brain foggy, just can't focus. So it had nothing to do with age, chronological age. It has to do with the health of your brains, the health of your brain cells. And neurodegeneration is a process, kind of like wrinkles. Sure, we do lose brain cells over time, but it's how fast are you doing that? Are you losing brain cells faster than it's time, right? That's what we're talking about. And the more you can protect the brain, the more you're going to stave off and put off dementia, Alzheimer, Parkinson, and things like that. So this is definitely a process that's reversible, right? Obviously, if all you do is drink, smoke, eat, sugar, and processed food, you're going to accelerate that process. We all innately know that, but science proves that. So if you know that's the case, then you can reverse it. It's all about what you can do. Take responsibility for your health. We're looking for a few good women and a few good men to be in our program so we can change their life and transform your health. We do this so with video consultations with our program. Okay, so now leaky gut in turn can actually increase zonulin release. And zonulin is a protein that are found in your intestinal tight junction. And if you have increased zonulin release, that can actually lead to increased brain inflammation. So you see that the leaky gut can lead to brain inflammation because there's that gut-brain connection we talk about so many times. In fact, this Wednesday we have a webinar on the big idea in reversing autoimmunity. Okay? And we're talking about the brain and the gut connection, really the brain-immune-gut connection. So I'll put the link to the webinar in the post here so that you can register for the webinar. It's actually a masterclass. It's a free masterclass that you can join to learn more about this, okay? So leaky gut can lead into brain inflammation and lead to more of these chemical intolerance and neurological autoimmune. And down this way, leaky gut can eventually lead to the decrease in nutrient that's going to protect your brain and lead to neurodegeneration. Continuing on, gluten can also trigger cross-reaction to what's called a GAD antibody, to the glutamic acid decarboxylase. This is an enzyme that your body uses to actually make GABA. Okay, GABA is a neurotransmitter that helps you stay calm. And GABA is very essential. It's a neurotransmitter that's very important for the basal ganglia. And basal ganglia, it's an anatomy, a part of the brain that controls your response to thoughts and movement. It basically gates your response to thoughts and movement. So what that happens is, if you have basal ganglia autoimmune, because that's what happens, when you have cross-reaction, that means the gluten starts to react against this enzyme, and now every time you eat gluten, it's triggering an immune response to this enzyme, which is going to lead to autoimmune to basal ganglia. So that means this part of the brain is literally being destroyed and being attacked by your own immune system induced by gluten. This is a known fact. When that happens, the symptoms of that is possible OCD, anxiety. You may also develop movement disorders like tics or dystonia, muscle tightness, restless leg syndrome. Okay, so these are all symptoms resulting from this part of the brain which controls movement and thought. So if you can't shut down your thought goes wild. What that means is you're going to focus and become obsessive about a single thing over and over again. That's obsessive compulsive disorder. Or you start to worry about things that just you don't need to be worried about because you can't shut it off, because that's what the basal ganglion does. It filters out your thought so you don't become over obsessed with something, so you can develop anxiety from gluten. So how do you know this may be the case for you? We can certainly do a test with GAD antibody, we can test sensitivity to gluten, and all these different markers that we can test. We can test leaky gut, by the way. If you eat gluten and you feel anxious afterward, now it could be a few hours afterwards, it could be a few days afterward, because this gluten reaction is a sensitivity reaction, which means it's a delayed onset response. It can take up to 3 to 5 days for that reaction to peak. So the first day or two you eat after you ate gluten, you may not feel bad, but after a few days, it really builds up that immune response, that reaction, then you can start developing symptoms of obsessive compulsiveness, anxiety, or you can have some movement problems. So if you notice that gluten tend to trigger these mood issues for you, then you know that gluten, you're probably sensitive to it, and this is a mechanism. So then we can run tests to identify if that's a problem and go ahead and balance it. Okay, so cross-reacting is really important. Now the GAD enzyme happens to be very important in cerebellum, because cerebellum is a part of the brain that controls movement, and it's GABAergic, meaning it's highly dependent on GABA to contribute to its function. So if you have autoimmune to cerebellum, then the symptom you're going to have is vertigo. You may have just vertiginous episodes that comes on after you eat gluten. May not have to do with a crystal in your ear or BPPV. You may also have poor balance, because cerebellum controls muscle tone and muscle coordination. So you may just feel like your balance is off. You may also have what's called dysautonomia. Dysautonomia means that your autonomic nervous system is out of balance. Autonomic nervous system is that part of the nervous system that controls everything that's on autopilot, from your blood pressure to your heart rate to your blood flow to your skin and so forth. So if you have dysautonomia, you may have blood pressure changes. So some people have what's called POTS, postural orthostatic hypotension. So if you have POTS, that's a form of dysautonomia, and POTS can be related to a gluten reaction causing autoimmune to your cerebellum, leading to autonomic dysfunction. Or you may have Raynaud's syndrome, where your blood vessel doesn't fill, so you have poor circulation in your hands. You may have heart palpitations, or heart rate just get jacked up, slow down, speed up, slow, and you go to the cardiologist, they've done umpteen number of tests. All they can tell you is that your heart rate goes up and down. Well, duh, that's what you're feeling, but what's causing it? Don't know. Your heart's perfectly fine. That may be due to a nervous system control of the heart. So it's not the heart itself that's the problem, it's the nerve control of the heart, which is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, and this can be triggered by this pathway here. Okay, again, these are diffuse, diverse neurological symptoms that's maybe not diagnosable through conventional medicine. So you may experience, brain fog. So what's the symptom of neuroautoimmune? Brain fog. What's the symptom of chemical intolerance? You're sensitive to every chemical under the sun. Chemical just gives you brain fog, headache, migraines, leaky gut. You may have absorption issue, gas bloating. And then you also have neurodegeneration, so you start getting more forgetful. And then you may have obsessiveness and anxiety. And then you may have like weird restless leg syndromes and weird muscle spasms. And then your balance sucks. And then you may have blood pressure that just up and down. You just can't maintain your blood pressure properly. It's low. Or your heart rate's going crazy and nobody can figure out why. If you have some or all of these, this is not because you made it up in your head. This is a real situation, but you go to the Western medical practitioner, they can't diagnose it because it may not have been bad enough, or they can actually see a lesion in your brain. So they say your test is normal, but these are functional problems. See, it requires a functional approach, a nutritional approach, because there's no drug for this stuff. There's just how do you balance your body chemistry by using nutrition supplementation. So you make up for any deficiency, you decrease any toxicity, the body comes into balance, your life comes back. You start to be able to live your life and start to have answer for the first time in your life. Hopefully this just provides some piece of the puzzle, but I'm not even getting started yet. There's more, but wait, there's more. So we also know that this gluten reaction can actually trigger autoimmune, AI means autoimmune, to tissue transglutaminase 6. This is an enzyme found in neurological tissues. And when you have, and this could be tested, we run tests on this. This is not a test, folks. Many of these markers are not tests that your regular conventional doctor would do, because insurance company will only cover tests so that we can identify a condition that can be treated by a drug or surgery. But what if it's something that cannot be treated by a drug or surgery? Let me give you an example of a condition that cannot be treated by a drug or surgery. If you're out of shape, obviously being physically out of shape, you sit around, you never exercise, you don't do anything physical. Being out of shape is a risk factor for disease, right? But being out of shape itself is not a diagnosable disease. Neither is being out of shape by itself treatable by a drug. I mean, if you're out of shape, what do? You go exercise. There's no drug for it, right? So you actually got to do lifestyle things, right? If you're stressed out, what you got to do? Manage your stress. Is there a drug for it? They'll peddle a drug to you, but it doesn't mean it's fixing anything. You got to fix your lifestyle, right? It all comes down to your personal responsibility, right? Natural means. So a lot of these stuff, we're talking leaky gut and blood-brain barrier, there's no drug for it. So therefore, your regular doctor will not test for these things because they can't just prescribe a drug and just make it go away. It doesn't work like that. It's like being out of shape. You got to take a part in it. You got to actually fix it. So we can actually test this. When we work with our clients, we test things like that. If you have antibody or autoimmune or antibody to tissue transglutaminase 6, you're going to create what's called neurological cross-reaction autoimmune. That means now this tissue transglutaminase 6 is actually found in several different brain tissues. So now your immune system is going to react to several different neurological tissue and create problem in those areas. And one of the things that can cause is called white matter disease or white matter lesions. What's white matter? White matter is that the myelin sheath, the outer covering of brain and nerves that makes your brain conduct electricity faster. The white matter is what helps your brain function smoothly. Okay, so people with multiple sclerosis have autoimmune against the white matter. That's one type of autoimmune disease or one type of white matter disease, MS. There are other types. But when you have white matter lesion, what happens is your neurons cannot conduct electricity or signals from cell to cell smoothly. Then you start to get weird neurological symptoms, numbness, tingling, weakness that may come and go. The numbness, tingling might come and go, blurry vision. These are related to these white matter lesions. So now you have what's called diverse neurosymptoms Because you have symptoms all over the place that doesn't follow a particular nerve distribution. Because it's not because you have a nerve root, that's why you have numbness tingling. But if you go to your doctor and say, oh, you have numbness tingling in your hand, it must be you have a pinched nerve, send you for x-ray. But it's not that. You don't have nothing pinched. It's because your immune system is attacking different parts of the brain, and now you have numbness tingling here, numbness tingling here, numbness tingling here. It doesn't follow any particular nerve pattern. It doesn't make any sense. When it makes no sense, it makes perfect sense. It's autoimmune. And gluten could be a trigger. Now, remember, this episode is about gluten because we know so much about gluten. We know that gluten definitely causes these issues. But remember, it could be dairy. Substitute another food in there, right? Whatever food you may be sensitive to. Substitute soy or corn. Substitute a chemical like BPA or metal or mercury. It could be any antigen, but gluten's definitely the big one. Okay, we know that they can do that. Now, another thing that this tissue transcontaminase 6 can implicate is that it can cause cerebellar atrophy. So cerebellum, again, we talk about here, is the part of the brain that controls balance coordination. So this marker, when it's positive, can indicate that that part of the brain is actually degenerating. It's atrophying. So that can lead to, again, ataxia, which is a type of gait problem, meaning you walk like you're drunk, but you haven't drank any alcohol. So some people just feel like they just can't walk right because the cerebellum is not working. It's because it's degenerating due to this gluten reaction causing autoimmune. Okay? Next, you can also have cross reaction to cerebellum itself. So we talk about cerebellum quite a lot. Gluten definitely has a lot of effect on this part of the brain called the cerebellum, which can cause, again, your vertigo, balance problem, dysautonomia, and ataxia, which is a balance issue. Now, another thing that gluten can cause is decreased cerebral, that means brain, perfusion. That means gluten is known to decrease blood flow to your brain, folks. Did you hear that? Gluten is known to decrease blood flow in the brain. They've done this through functional MRI studies, but gluten can decrease blood flow. Why is that important? Because blood is how you deliver oxygen and glucose. Remember, we talk about the priority systems in the body. You need to be first able to establish fuel delivery. You have to deliver fuel to your tissue, and your brain needs oxygen and glucose. If you have decreased cerebral perfusion, you cannot deliver oxygen and glucose. Your brain just not going to function well, right? And the consequence of that is that you're going to have decreased O2 and nutrient delivery to your brain. And that's no bueno. And then what that's going to lead to is neurodegeneration. Because when you can't deliver fuel or oxygen, your brain cells die. And as you neurodegenerate, you start to lose function associated with that area. Again, if it's in the temporal lobe, you lose memory. If it's in the frontal lobe, you start to move slow, you think slow, you just can't process information as fast. This is not good because you don't get brain cells back. Once you lose them, that's it. You can only develop plasticity, but the plasticity can only develop, under certain circumstances. The same mechanism that's causing you to neurodegenerate, to lose brain cells, is the same mechanism that's going to decrease your plasticity. So it becomes a vicious cycle. You must address these root causes, gluten being one. But we're talking about gluten because so many people think it's just a fad or it's just a preference when it's actually a real disease-causing problem. And the other problem that you can have with this is that you get brain fog, right? Because you can't deliver fuel to your brain. Guess what? Your brain cells cannot conduct, nerve conduction velocity slows, then you're going to get problems, okay? So these are some of the problems that can directly relate to decreased fuel delivery in your brain. And last but not least, the incomplete breakdown of gluten can produce compounds called gluteomorphine and prodenorphin. And these are opioid peptides. They're opioids that make you feel good, that make your brain feel good. So that's why some people eat gluten. They just love bakery. They love bread. They can't cut it out. It's like they're addicted to it because literally, you see this word morphine? This incomplete breakdown product of gluten literally creates a morphine compound that's the same as like a narcotic drug, and it goes to the same part of your brain called the nucleus accumbens that creates addiction to something and literally makes you addicted to gluten. Okay? And what happens is these opioid compounds can actually alter neurotransmitter status. So when you start to mess with your neurotransmitter, you can start to develop depression. You feel anxious. You have mood swings. You feel like you're bipolar. You feel like you cry easily, especially after you eat gluten. Again, this could be a few hours after you eat gluten. It could be a few days after you eat gluten. So it becomes very unpredictable. It can come and go. It can be like very unpredictable. So you get these altered mood. That's what it leads to. Okay? These opioid compounds from gluten can also alter your gut motility because your gut is full of neurotransmitters. 70% of the neurotransmitters or serotonin is actually found in your gut. So if you start to alter these opioid levels and its effect on the neurotransmitter in the gut, you're going to alter gut motility. This can create things like constipation, or diarrhea, or gas, bloating, cramps. And so now we have gut problem. So then we have the brain-gut connection. So this is how gluten can affect not just brain and gut and inflammation and immune system. And that's why the brain-immune-gut axis is connected. And gluten can alter and mess with all three. So again, hope this video helps you underscore the importance of using nutrition and dietary change to actually modify your body's physiological marker and biochemistry, and therefore changing your state, changing your physiology, changing your predisposition to different diseases. You can absolutely do it. You need guidance. That's why we're giving you these educational material. But some people need to work with a practitioner. In fact, I recommend you work with a practitioner, someone like me who can help you order the right test. Now, this Wednesday, we have a webinar called the Big Idea in Reversing Autoimmunity. You can go to that, register for that webinar. Go to askdrkhan.com. Oh, gee, that's not the link. You know what? I don't even know what the link is. I will put that registration link in this post here, so you can click on it. Okay, but that's our website. But I'll put the registration link so you can register for that webinar. We're going to talk about the brain-immune-gut axis and how that affects autoimmunity and how that creates all these brain symptoms. So if you or someone you know suffer with these, diverse neurological symptoms, either sensory issues, numbness, tingling, pain, or motor issues, weakness, or you have certain type of dysautonomia where your blood pressure, your heart rate is always kind of jacked up, you don't know why, or you have mood issues with depression, anxiety, you feel OCD tendencies, you have, your mood just alternates, you have gut issues, you have inflammation. These are all things that by coming to the webinar and working with us directly one-on-one can help you identify the root cause and help you feel better. As always, please like and follow my Facebook videos and Facebook channel. And also you can visit me at youtube.com/PeterKhanDC for more videos. And please share this video with those who you know can benefit from this information. As always, you're just one whiteboard away from solving your health puzzle, and I'll see you next week at the Ask Dr. Khan Show. Take care.